Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Editor and the Alien. I am your host, the Night Editor, Kat Rocha, and with me, as always, is
J.Ishiro Finney, author and alien in a human suit. A man who has written, a man and an alien, who has written many and many a great graphic novel. And if you haven't purchased one yet, you should go to Amazon.com and order all of them, including the Titanium Rain audio drama, because we're all trapped in our houses right now, and reading stems madness.
Reading does stem madness. In fact, lots of great mad people were also good readers.
And you know, I think if that family in Colorado Space had just had a few graphic novels around the house, they may not have gone insane.
No. See, what you fail to miss is the fact that really the color out of space is the perfect color for an Easter egg, and that was Nicolas Cage's obsession.
What?
It's Easter.
Oh, yeah, okay. So, what are we doing tonight?
We're doing color out of space.
So, give them a rundown. Well, okay, shit, I'll do it. They like your voice better.
Well, I can do it. I can do it. I just I figured you would do it because you're so familiar with the original story, but I can do it. Color Out of Space is directed by Richard Stanley. Richard Stanley, of course, is the genius behind the movie Hardwired. If you have
Hardware.
I always say the wrong title. I apologize, Richard.
Hardwired is one of two things. It's a great album by the band Frontline Assembly or a great cyberpunk novel by Walter John Williams.
I always get it wrong.
Hardware is one of the quintessential cyberpunk movies of the 1980s.
All three of them are things that you should be familiar with and own. Okay, I'm gonna just say that. Anyway, this proves that Richard Stanley is back with a vengeance after his longtime hiatus. We can get into that in a bit. It is based on an H.P. Lovecraft short story, and
by the same name.
And we will get into that story as we talk about the film.
Yes. Before we enter into that, though, for those of you not aware, the H.P. Lovecraft story is a very subtle, slow-moving tension piece, really. I mean, it does not have the makings of a great horror film.
Lovecraft is slow-moving and filled with tension?
But this film did an excellent job of keeping true to the initial concept and executing it amazingly. There have been many attempts in the past, including the Creep Show.
Yeah.
And none of them have been all that good. I mean, they've been silly and funny, but the big problem was always the color. Now, in the story by Lovecraft, there was his family living on a farm out in the backwoods of New England, Lovecraft country, and a thing falls out of the sky, a meteor, and slowly from that meteor, a bizarre, unearthly color that can't be identified begins to spread out and alter everything around it. And the biggest obstacle to ever portraying it was, of course, the color. How do you portray a color nobody's ever seen? Usually it was either sickly green or black. I think one comic book did it as just pure white, and it was a black and white comic, so, fill it in with your imagination. This was really well done.
Extremely well done. I really, really appreciate, one, his use of practical effects when it came to showing off not just the color, but just the manifestation of the thing that came with the meteor. And two, I really appreciated how much of the story wasn't about the catalyst, the titular thing that fell from the sky. It's about this family and how they are falling apart. And it's more of a character piece than it is about, an event that causes people to go crazy.
And the nice thing about that is in the Lovecraft version of Color Out of Space, it's being told primarily through the point of view of a scientist from Miskatonic University. And there is such a character. He's a student in this case, or was he a
He was a student working on his doctorate.
Yeah, as a hydrologist.
Mhm.
And in the story, the scientist taking the survey is the one that it's told from. It's from his perspective. And like most Lovecraft stories, it's always being told from the role of the observer, and it's just sort of happening around them or to them.
Mhm.
The really smart move here to make this a compelling story that you're going to sit down and watch is he shifted the point of view to it being about the family.
Yeah.
And the horror that they're going through. Very quickly, in short order, the first act sets up the family as essentially a very well-adjusted family that's just seen some rough times. The wife has just recovered from cancer. The husband's trying to struggle with being middle-aged. And then they've got 3 kids who don't want to be living on this farm that they've moved out to because it's in the middle of nowhere. The daughter is a Wiccan.
Yeah.
A Wiccan goth and a bit fruity. The son's kind of a stoner who's into science. And the youngest kid is... He likes dinosaurs.
Yes.
There's lots of little Easter eggs all over it, but I would argue that there aren't really... This isn't a film where the symbolism means a whole hell of a lot.
No, you can watch this film knowing absolutely nothing about Lovecraft or witchcraft or just anything, and just watch it for the sake of what it is.
I mean, the hydrologist shows up wearing a Miskatonic University t-shirt, which I'm wondering, did they make that or just order the one you can get on the internet?
I was trying to figure that out too, actually.
And he is wearing a seashell around his neck. Neither of them factor into the story. They're just Easter eggs for if you know about Lovecraft. They both mean something.
Yeah.
And that shell could be setting him up for returning in Innsmouth.
Yeah.
He might actually be if I hear apparently Stanley's going to do 3 of these.
Oh.
So if he does the story Shadow over Innsmouth, I'm wondering if the hydrologist is going to be the poor son of a bitch who goes to Innsmouth.
Well, that would factor into some of the news reports because, okay, I think that this got cut from the story.
We didn't watch the cut scenes.
No,
so.
we haven't watched the cut scenes. I think this got cut from the film just from clues. But piecing things together, you get the fact that the mayor of Arkham is
a plastic surgery junkie.
Yeah, she's a plastic surgery junkie, and she's been buying up all the land around the coast in order to build this this reservoir, and this family is holding out. And she has hired Miskatonic to do surveys of the land in the area to see what the water quality is going to be, hence why the student is out there surveying the water. Later, you see him waiting for his turn to have a meeting with the mayor. And you've got news reports going on about how the water is getting polluted. And it shows a picture of fish dying in it, saying the people of Innsmouth are flipping out.
Yeah, and I'm kind of wondering with this plot of the dam, because, yeah, I agree this must have been cut, but there definitely was a sense the mayor wanted to buy the property from this family, and they were holding out and blocking the dam.
Yeah, that it was them that was holding it up, because as soon as events from the film happen, she's able to get her way and is able to dam the area up and fill it with water.
So I'm wondering if he's going to do Shadow over Innsmouth next, is Dagon going to come from the fact that this thing is at the bottom of the water in the dam?
I kind of wonder.
Rather than the origin that Lovecraft gave it, so to tie them together.
Well, you have the guy who's doing the survey standing on the edge of the dam looking out over the water saying, "I'll never drink it." So, and that has multiple meanings. And
in Shadow over Innsmouth, they make the deal with Dagon because their fisheries go dry.
Their fisheries go dry. They're poor. Their people are dying.
Okay, so we get essentially all the information laid out very quickly. They live on a farm. They're essentially a good family with some issues, and they're isolated. There's some kind of background subliminals going on, but they don't really seem to ever amount to much. Like you pointed out that when the daughter at the beginning is doing her fruity Wiccan ceremony, asking to please get me out of this town, out of this farm. Let me get me out of here.
Yeah,
and heal my mom.
Yeah, she wants her mom healed, and she's able to get that part of her ritual off. But when she says "get me out of here" is when she's interrupted
by the hydrologist. But
yeah,
you had pointed out that the triangle hair, what is it, a clip?
Yeah, the barrette that she has in the holding her hair back is the one of the symbols for fire.
What, druidic or is it Kabbalistic?
I think it's Kabbalistic.
Or might it be some fruity Wiccan thing that was made up?
I think it's either Kabbalistic. It might be fruity Wiccan. I've also seen it used for alchemic. So
I bet it's alchemic. And then they cut to the mother who's up in her attic office. And what she does, like e-trading or something?
She's doing e-trading or she's an e-trader for people, yeah. And
her window is another triangular symbol, and you said it was a symbol for fire. Air. Yeah. Now that's it. They don't bring up any more symbolism. It doesn't really seem to play into the plot in it. It's just there.
Yeah, it is just there.
So, yeah, I don't think there's really any real subtle messages going on here.
No, it's just interesting that it's there. I mean, unless, again, there's stuff that was cut. But who knows?
I thought it was kind of interesting that the youngest kid was obsessed with dinosaurs, and then a meteor falls into their yard. And
well, you saw he had Rodan hanging from his ceiling.
Yeah. Is that Rodan or was that a dactyl?
No, that was Rodan because that came from the same.
Oh, you had that toy, didn't you? Had that plushie?
I didn't have that Rodan. I had King Ghidorah. No, wait, I did have that Rodan. Yes, I did have that Rodan.
In fact, it might still be packed somewhere.
It is. It's with King Ghidorah and I think Dark Godzilla.
Yeah, that's right. Kat actually has a plushie Rodan, King Ghidorah, and Godzilla.
Yes.
That's just waiting for an actual large enough house to display them again or have them on the bed.
There will be a kick-ass diorama, I assure you. Anyway.
When Mike was staying at the house and he walked in because I was still passed out, and that was when you had a bunch of the stuffed animals in there.
This is my dad or
no Mike.
Oh, Mike
Colbert.
Oh,
and he peeks in and the teddy bear's right into my neck, and there's the Rodan and the King Ghidorah, and he says, "Nice teddy."
Yeah.
That's actually where the scene in Case File Arkham came from.
Oh, okay.
Because I was like, oh yeah, there's a bear in here, isn't there? Yeah, okay, whatever. Okay, so you start getting the sense of the family.
Well, also, what I like is how Richard Stanley took his time to get you familiar with this family, introduce the family, introduce what their day-to-day life is like, so you can,
their whole people.
Yeah, so that they're whole people, and you really get to know them, and there's no sense of rush. However, on top of that, he does establish an awful lot in a small amount of time. For one thing, the fact that the two parents have decided to just pull up stakes and leave the city for the country, possibly on a whim or on a, we're not getting any younger. If we don't do it now, we're never going to do it. That for Nicolas Cage, this is his second chance at life, where he's starting this farm. He's growing his own crops. He's raising alpacas. He doesn't entirely understand what you raise alpacas for, but damn it, he knows you can make money with them, and so that's why he's going to raise them. And he does bring up the fact that he doesn't want to be his father. And I think there was supposed to be more with that, but the little that there was good. I just think that you could tell that there was supposed to be more to that message through the story, but that's okay. I don't feel like I'm less than for that not being there. But again, you really get the sense that this is this family's second chance, and that they actually haven't been living in this house for very long, and they're not used to being out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. So everything suddenly set amok the moment a meteor falls in their yard,
Mm-hmm.
as it's prone to do
As
in
it
these
is.
kinds of films.
Mm-hmm.
And if
you've seen The Blob, right?
and you know, it's very likely that's where the blob came from.
Oh, I've heard very much so that that's where the blob came from, or at least that was the starting
idea.
point. Mm-hmm.
And they react as one would if a giant glowing rock falls in your yard.
Mm-hmm.
And what?
Yeah, the don't get close while we poke it with a stick.
Like in The Blob.
Like in The Blob.
Oh, we also get introduced to the hippie down the road who's
Mm-hmm.
kind of a hermit.
What's interesting about him is he's a hippie, but he's not a Luddite. He's actually a paranoid.
Yeah, he's a kind of a weird... he's obviously done too much acid, and it's played by Tommy Chong, so I mean, he's kind of playing himself.
He was perfect. But it was great because he had that right amount of, hey, man, you know, just be cool, man, but also the paranoid. So he
was kind of like playing a likable version of Alan Moore.
Yes, he was.
If Alan Moore was actually a tolerable, nice guy that you'd want to talk to.
I don't think Alan Moore's house would look that cool, though.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I agree.
But he'd be into that witchcraft stuff.
Nor would he have as good a sense of humor.
No, he wouldn't. Would he still have
a cat
named G-Spot?
I don't even want to think what Alan Moore would do to a cat named G-Spot.
Yes, Tommy Chong named his cat G-Spot in this film. That is awesome.
The humor in this was solid.
It was solid.
And it didn't come across as forced or, hey, we need a funny moment now.
No.
It was all the kind of humor you should have in this kind of film, which was normal people reacting the way they should in a bizarre situation.
Yes. And it was just enough humor to offset the weirdness or offset the kind of disturbing scenes, you know, to just help you to get a little bit of a reset to prepare you for the next.
And I really like that kind of humor. I'm a fan of humor where you don't break the believability or the air or atmosphere of the story. You just simply have people react realistically.
Yeah. Well, and you're introduced to the cat by the teenage boy, you know, who's giggling about the fact that it's a pussy named G-Spot.
You can rub my pussy.
Yeah.
Scratch G-Spot behind the neck.
Yeah. Like
G-Spot likes that.
Like how much of that was ad lib?
It's Tommy Chong. It's very likely quite a bit of it is.
Yeah.
So then weird stuff starts happening. Lightning seems to be the lightning is drawn to the meteor.
Mm-hmm.
And overnight there's this huge electrical storm, and the rock gets hit, or the meteor gets hit multiple times, and in the morning it's vanished.
Mm-hmm.
In the original story, it slowly dissipates and kind of turns into kind of a weird gas liquid that seeps into the earth. This was a much better, more accelerated way to do it. It gave us an impressive scene. What?
Well, it gave us an impressive scene. It really helped with the strange atmosphere because this weird, the color that Stanley used is this weird pink purple color
that would undulate and change.
Yeah, it was almost a prismatic effect. And what I liked is instead of it turning into this weird gaseous ooze that just kind of seeped around, visually speaking, you saw that the meteor landed within 15 feet of the family's well. And without anybody saying anything, if you're smart, you figure out, no, the thing's gone into the groundwater.
Yeah.
And at that,
well, they keep talking about contaminated groundwater anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea that the groundwater was already contaminated and this just made it worse.
Yeah.
But another thing, just going back to the very beginning, there were a few things where it was, again, nods to the audience if you knew anything about the story.
Mm-hmm.
The color in the girl's hair.
Oh, the blue purple?
Yeah, was kind of a given. The first shot of Nick Cage is he's sitting on the porch drinking out of a coffee mug that is prismatic.
Yes.
Don't consume this stuff was the...
Mm-hmm.
Also, the music in this was incredible.
It was. It really was.
I'm going to try and find out who did it, because this is one hell of a soundtrack. We went through this period through the 90s where every soundtrack after a while began to sound like Danny Elfman.
Yeah.
And it really was painful. And then we went through the 2000s where every soundtrack had to sound like Hans Zimmer with the
that weird horn.
Yeah.
Is it a horn or is it a
drone? Just a droning sound. This drone hit.
Yeah, everybody had to have that hit.
And one thing that I'm really beginning to see more of in the indie films, at least, are unique soundtracks again. I'm really glad to see them being less boxed, people taking chances, deciding, hey, let's actually make a soundtrack tailored to the type of movie this is, rather than just, okay, well, let's drop in generic Hans Zimmer score here.
Well, I'm finding that they tend to pick soundtracks that sound like industrial bands, or bands that they enjoyed, or getting people like that to do the soundtrack.
What did we say about Dread? Mm-hmm. Dread had a very retro analog synthesizer, very futuristic soundtrack. Amazing. I mean, it was more synthwave than synthwave.
Yeah.
But then in this was very atmospheric, extremely electronic. Had overtones of synthwave, but it really was unique and unto itself, which I really appreciated. I know there's a few other films I can't recall off the top of my head, but we're seeing more of that, and I'm glad, because there's more to a movie sound. Everything in a film should be tailored to tell the story. And I just keep imagining what would have happened if you had given Blade Runner an archetypical synth or strings soundtrack or sci-fi soundtrack of the early 80s. Okay, well, we need John Williams.
That just reminds me of...
It would have killed it.
Well,
Legend.
Yeah, Legend.
Bring up Legend.
Yeah, okay. For those of you who have seen Legend, Tangerine Dream's soundtrack, honestly, in my opinion, besides Tim Curry, it's Tim Curry and Tangerine Dream made that film. You need to have both of those elements in order to fully experience how awesome that film is. And I bought the director's cut, and for some God-known reason, I have no clue what insanity gripped him. Ridley Scott decided to ditch the Tangerine Dream soundtrack and put this bullshit strings fully orchestrated. Actually it did sound like it was a boxed soundtrack, drag and drop, and it didn't even fit the scenes, and it totally ruined it. It's like, what the hell? No, you need that original soundtrack, because that original soundtrack made the feel of that film.
And in this case, I would say the soundtrack absolutely made this movie more effective.
I agree.
If we had gotten the typical synth or string stabs and orchestra hits and drones and the jump scare noises,
yeah,
it would not have had the impact that it did.
Well, coming back to soundtrack and how you need a damn good one to match the film. One thing I really liked about an element of how the insanity manifested.
Oh, yeah, the music went along with it.
Well, what I liked is that each person experienced the insanity differently. And for the daughter, it was through sound, and you're constantly seeing her putting on her headphones and listening to music.
Trying to drown it out.
Yeah, trying to drown out the sound that this creature makes. She's constantly trying to drown things out. And when she finally succumbs to it or gives up, or recognizes her fate, she's no longer trying to drown it out. Her brother, it's visual. He sees things. He sees things in the fog. He's one of the first ones to notice the color creeping into the countryside. He's the first one that starts, seeing different things, and he's the one who sees the meteor come through, and one of the first two to go insane,
right,
as a result.
Do you think it was because he actually saw the light?
I think where the youngest brother actually saw the light directly, he saw it through his computer screen. So
right,
he got a filter, and it's still, you even see him like drooling, and it basically shut his brain off temporarily. But he starts noticing things that way, where the youngest brother saw it by himself. And if you're going to use Call of Cthulhu rules, the fact that he's a kid probably made sure he had more sanity points to spend on that than otherwise. Nick Cage, for him, it was definitely the fact that he kept trying to block out what was wrong, because he really wanted to have this perfect idealized family.
Yeah.
He
kept muttering, everything's under control. I've got everything under control.
That became his sanity. His insanity is seeing things, and the drink. It constantly, the more you see him diminish in sanity, he is constantly reaching for that scotch with ice cubes that have been made with contaminated water. And I love the practical effect of having these ice cubes with this prismatic color in them, where under normal circumstances, you would just think the ice cube had formed so you could get a little prism or a little rainbow in there. But because of the nature of the story, no, it tells you this thing's contaminated.
So before we proceed, I feel that we kind of ripped on Hans Zimmer some. So let's address this. And a lot of people in the chat have now been talking about him.
There are times when Hans Zimmer can be very overrated and overused.
I would agree. There was a time when Hans Zimmer was excellent. I would say his Black Hawk Down soundtrack is extremely unique. It specifically sounds like it belongs to that movie, and really nothing else sounds like it. The Inception soundtrack is gorgeous.
I still listen to Dark Knight.
Yeah, the Dark Knight soundtracks are excellent. And then, just like Danny Elfman, he hit some point where he was just going to phone it in. He's, a lot of these films, he's like, well, they're paying me a lot. And what was that rapper that he did the weird dubstep Spider-Man soundtrack that was just shit? Oh,
that was really Hans Zimmer.
I was like, at this point, he's just like, okay, I'll take the money. Why not? And
no, I just know a friend had let me borrow her soundtrack to Sherlock Holmes. And I'm like, this is Zimmer by numbers. This is awful.
Well, the thing that really killed me, too, just bringing up Zimmer, is he was given the gift of a lifetime. The opportunity that just about every musician I've ever talked to who does electronic music, who does soundtracks, he said, oh, I'd love to score that movie. And they all said Blade Runner. They all said, if I could score Blade Runner or a film like Blade Runner, that would be the dream come true. Blade Runner 2049 comes around, Zimmer gets it, and he fucking churns out the most generic piece of shit soundtrack that is it's Hans Zimmer with a little touch of Vangelis, but not very good.
I'm glad I didn't pay attention to it.
I figured, okay, this is Hans Zimmer. This is the chance of a lifetime. I'm sure he'll put effort into this one. No, he didn't. And not only that, I was like, why choose him? Of all people, why choose him? I mean, how about get a really good synthwave band like Carpenter Brut or Perturbator?
Yeah.
Or why not Mike McCann, who did the Deus Ex Human Revolution soundtrack? Somebody who's really innovative, who is meant for that kind of thing. Fuck, get Bill Lee from Frontline Assembly to do it.
Shit.
Or Kevin Key of Skinny Puppy.
No, see, that would make it legit and wouldn't make it Hollywood.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, there's just...
the people that they don't like would then like it.
Yeah, another film that had a unique soundtrack that didn't sound like anything else, that fit exactly for it, nothing else. Mm-hmm. Pacific Rim.
Yes, very much so.
And what was it, Godzilla King of Monsters, where they did all the references to Akira Fukube?
Yes, but yet made their own.
Yeah, and see, that's what I mean by there are a lot of these more smaller or less mainstream films that have more cult audiences where we're getting good music again, where as a writer, that's great to have soundtracks to play in the background. But yeah, it's frustrating. It is very, very frustrating. So anyway,
moving on.
Yeah, if you like soundtracks, this is a film for you. You buy this one. Yeah, Tron Legacy, Elton. That was a good one. Okay. Then there's some other interesting things as the color begins to seep into the earth and flowers start to grow weird, and it starts to affect the family and the landscape and anything living for that matter. And the weird light and time distortion phenomena happen. Is they start having things that I thought this was cool because it started implementing things that are typically associated with aliens and alien abduction. And I wonder if that was just Richard Stanley having fun.
I agree, but tell the audience.
Well, they start experiencing time distortions or time dilations where they'll go outside and suddenly it's nighttime and they have no memory of how it happened, or time will be moving differently in one spot than another. There was constant mysterious phone calls with weird voices was another. Electronics turning themselves off or malfunctioning. These are all archetypical alien intervention or alien presence type lore. And a lot of these came out of the Legend of the Mothman.
Well, I knew the cars turning themselves on and off
was a constant one. Yeah. The strange phone calls is another with weird voices.
Radios tuning to strange channels.
Right. Although apparently that is an actual natural phenomena.
The radios thing?
Yeah, I don't understand it. I've heard that actually can happen depending of where you're located.
I believe it's something with the electromagnetic field.
Yeah.
And
I bet your dad could explain it.
I know Phil's talked to me about it.
Her stepdad, Phil, is a ham radio nut and an electronics nut. So.
No, I think he's actually experienced it before. He went up into the mountains once.
I thought it was also interesting that when the radio starts up, the song starts on it is something about water. It's some country song about water.
Oh, was it?
It's something about it's in the water.
I was trying to catch what it was saying. Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, after the lightning storm, the meteor vanishes, and that's when all hell starts breaking loose. Other little things that are just kind of fun is when the news finally shows up to the house and there's no evidence anymore.
Yes.
And the news station is WARK, not WARK as in a chocobo, but WARK as in W Arkham.
Yeah. And what is their symbol?
Lovecraft's elder sign.
Yes.
Not August Derleth's elder sign, the star with the eye. No, the original elder sign, which is this weird rune branch looking thing. Yeah,
it looks like it's like it doesn't look like thorn. I'm trying to remember which rune it looks like, but yeah. Oh man, I was just rolling laughing seeing that.
The kid starts whistling into the well, saying that he's talking to the man in the well. Weird bugs start hatching and coming out of the well, which is, again, in the story, it was centered in the well, and it started mutating the life around it.
Oh, like the plants, they start flowering, but the fruit that they produce is worthless.
Right.
The alpacas start acting weird.
Yeah, they mutate into eventually they mutate into one of the creatures from The Thing.
That's what I was seeing in that, and I really liked how that was done, where you could tell that was what he was referencing, but it wasn't trying to redo the thing. They
start getting sick. Things start going very bad with the weird rashes start forming on them. There's the scene with the cat. Now, in the original story, there's a scene where the scientists are driving out there. I believe it's the scientist and a sheriff are driving out to the farm at night. I think it is, or maybe it was some hunters. I don't remember. It's been a while since I've read the story. I've read it several times. And in the original story, they see a deer cross the road, but the thing's ghost white and its legs are elongated and its eyes have gone weird and huge and its antlers are all deformed and it looks completely and just alien. And they replaced it with the cat in the road.
Which I like that they did that, because you as the viewer already have a connection to this cat. You've already been introduced to the cat. So to see how it's mutated.
In the story, the orchard and all the vegetables they were growing, they have this gigantic crop yield, and they think, oh, great, we're loaded. This is going to be the great money. We're going to make all this money now. And no matter how huge and luscious and yummy the food looks, it's disgusting tasting. And eating it just made them worse.
I would also like to say, as the produce rotted, Nicolas Cage's performance in this film was absolutely superb. I was watching him wondering, could anybody else do this role? And I'm sure there are other actors who could do it, but not the way he did. And his slow descent into madness and slowly losing his shit, where all of his dreams of being this farmer and ultimately not becoming his father and not becoming this abusive bastard start turning to shit. And so watching him degenerate and go from this kind, loving husband and father to this, slowly descending asshole was just perfect. And it really all culminated in when he realizes that his crop is crap.
And he starts pacing around the house, becoming more abusive, and he keeps screaming, "I'm not my dad. I'm not my dad."
Yeah. And yes, he does a Nicolas Cage tantrum several times.
Okay, I have to admit, a few of those tantrums struck me as a little goofy.
They were goofy, but
that voice he was making.
Yeah, they were, but I thought it worked for the scene and the scenario. And again, it's that right amount of humor and horror where, yes, you are seeing him flip out maybe over the top, but then it immediately flips around and he is completely deadpan and just totally serious, and you're like, okay, this person's losing their shit. Sorry, I'm just laughing at one of the scenes.
What?
That scene where the water guy and the cop comes to the house and
he's covered in blood.
He's covered in blood, and he just looks tired and beat up. And they're like, we're gonna go upstairs because they hear screaming upstairs, and he goes, okay, I'm gonna get a drink.
Okay, we've got an interesting comment here from Adam C.
Okay. I thought it was Nick Cage taste buds that had been affected, like he can't find joy anymore, in so much as the flavor of the tomatoes.
As a symbolic, when you're writing for film especially, but this counts for any medium. If you can have a symbolic thing that embodies or reflects what's going on in the character's mind or heart, that's very effective. And, a lot of people say, oh, you don't use symbols. Nobody does this, is pretentious, or nobody uses symbols. No, you use them often to communicate things that you can't get because you can't go right into their head. Especially in film, unless you're going to do an inner monologue, you can't just hear what's in their head. And so, yeah, I think that was kind of an interesting way to take an element from the original story where all the crop yields were just sour or tasteless. And it, in a sense, was kind of communicating that even what he tried to grow there had completely failed. Mm-hmm. And yeah, he couldn't get any joy out of it. So yeah, that's a good observation, Adam.
Well, it is, especially since you never saw anybody else eat his crops.
Yeah.
In fact, when they were offered to do so, he threw them away instead. So,
how much do you think that was ad-libbed?
I think a good chunk of it.
Slam dunk.
Oh yeah, I definitely think that was ad-libbed.
Um, so heading into the third act, um, the two towns that kept getting mentioned in the background were Innsmouth and Dunwich.
Yeah.
And I believe those are the other two film stories he wants to do, Shadow over Innsmouth and Dunwich Horror. I believe Dunwich is the next one.
Nice.
And this is another point where I wonder if this is how Stanley's going to tie this film to Dunwich. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
In the Dunwich Horror, it's a story about a witch family, and witch in the term of traditional, not women, but weird backwoods people that do magic through channeling spirits.
Mm-hmm. And Lovecraft has a lot of witches in his stories.
Yes. They essentially, the story there is that the mother births a half demon because they did some ritual where she got taken. She had sex with Yog Sothoth,
Mm-hmm.
an outer god, and produced his spawn. And that
Ugh.
spawn was supposed to summon Yog Sothoth through the gate to take over and bring about the time of the old ones in that story.
Mm-hmm.
Now, a major part of that story is the sigil of the gate, which is a symbol you see a lot associated with Lovecraft. And it's that star with, it's another Greek symbol, I believe.
It's two different symbols.
It's a pentagram and another symbol and another symbol. It's three put together, isn't it?
Correct.
And midway through, or at the third act, the beginning of the third act, when everything's going bad, the daughter decides she has a copy of the Necronomicon. Okay, I don't know how that happened.
What's funny is
it's the mail order one.
Yeah.
Isn't that produced by Chaosium, or it had been?
It is.
Now Wizard of the Coast.
My friend Andrew had it in high school.
Yeah, that was the Chaosium version.
Yeah.
And then wasn't WotC did one too?
No, WotC didn't do one.
But there's multiple phony versions of it.
Yeah.
She does a ritual out of it to cast a protection spell, and she starts carving runes and symbols into her skin, and onto her back she carves the sigil of the gate.
And not only that, but you see the blood from where she's been carving into herself dripping onto the book, and it's dripping onto the page where it has the three different symbols separate from each other.
Now, I'm not sure how much of the ending we should reveal. I mean, this is usually a spoiler-filled show, but...
Sorry, I flashed on Nature Trail to Hell. Please don't reveal the secret ending to your friends.
But what do you say? Should we keep it quiet, or do we continue?
No, actually, I'm going to say let's keep the ending quiet.
Okay.
I don't... Because really, the story isn't about the ending; it's about the journey.
Yeah.
So
okay, so we'll not talk about the ending. The only thing I'll mention is at the beginning, the daughter says, "Get me out of here," and she wanted to be something else, somewhere else.
Yeah.
And she carves the sigil of the gate on her, and then what happens to her at the end, that weird gateway forms.
Yeah.
That's where I think it's going to tie in.
Well, she also welcomes it.
Yeah.
And you kind of get the sense that she is helping to channel it as things happen.
And you know that Richard Stanley has balls when he's willing to do that to the mom and the child, the youngest kid. Won't say what.
Yeah, I just about applauded when horrible things happened to the child that is under 10 years old.
You got to talk into the mic.
I was. No. Okay. You want me to say it again?
Yeah.
Okay. For those of you who didn't hear me, because apparently I wasn't facing the mic, sorry if you couldn't hear me. I just about applauded when I saw that horrible things happened to the child that was under 10 years old. It is a rare thing to see a director have the balls in a horror film to do anything to a child, seriously. And it definitely was one of those moments of like, oh, that's great. He's upped the ante. Now you don't know what's going to happen to anybody if the kid has something this horrible happen to them.
That's the reason Carpenter's Assault on Precinct 13 is so effective.
Yeah, within the first 5 minutes, a 10-year-old gets shot in the chest.
Yeah.
You know, it's like after that, anything goes.
So I think now is a good time, unless you've got any final comments on it. I mean, other than I think this is an excellent approach to an H.P. Lovecraft. I think one of the best.
I think it's one of the best. I think, you know, with something as easy as, quote, the color out of space, the use of color would be a very easy cop out and could very quickly become boring. Too often today, people make horror films about the event and it's people reacting to the event. You know, shit like The Happening, just to use as a horrible example. And the fact that this film fell victim to none of that. It was first and foremost a story about a family falling apart. And what the catalyst was to cause that really took a back seat, and that's what was needed for this story, and it was perfect.
The other takeaway I get from this is that Richard Stanley was one of the great rising talents in the 80s, and his career was abruptly brought to an end by Hollywood bullshit and him being essentially the fall guy for their crap.
What's the name of the documentary that was done on Dr. Moreau? There was a documentary on that.
Yeah, I believe it was called Hollywood is a Hive of Scum and Villainy, full of racists and greedy shitheads who love to preach because they don't live up to any of it.
And arrogant assholes with ice buckets on their heads.
Yes, and that the only cure is a thermonuclear device. That's the name of the documentary.
Oh, okay. No, there is a documentary on...
I'll get it. Hold on.
What happened. Long story short, while Ishii's looking for it, Richard Stanley was originally slated to direct The Island of Dr. Moreau. Is in the 90s? Or
and like within the first week, he got the boot or something.
Was it the first week? I thought he had a month.
Maybe it was a month. I forget.
I just know he was... so much shit was thrown at him. It's not his fault. He was like temporarily driven insane. I mean, really, it was that bad. You know, Marlon Brando was partially at fault, and the studios were at fault, and just, yeah. And I mean, it had Fairuza Balk in it too, which, you know, that could have been awesome if Stanley had
kind of fucked up her career too.
Yeah, it did. So, it took him a long time to recover from, you know, what happened with that film, and I am so glad to see him coming back and remaking his name and showing that he's not gone. And damn, this film is awesome. Yeah,
proof that he is a very talented director.
Mm-hmm.
Geez, where the hell is it? You think
Jodorowsky's Dune, Richard Stanley on Island of Lost Souls.
Here it is.
Oh, Lost Souls, The Doom Journey of Richard Stanley's Island of Dr. Moreau. So check it out.
So my takeaway from this is, in a sense, it's bittersweet. I'm thrilled to see Stanley come back and provide such an amazing film and an interpretation of Lovecraft's work that is right up there with Stuart Gordon's Dreams of the Witch House.
Mm-hmm.
And John Carpenter's In the Mouth of Madness, which isn't a direct, it's inspired by it, isn't a direct adaptation. But it's bittersweet because how many years of this guy's life, of Stanley's life, could he have been making great films if not for the Hollywood system and their greedy, backstabbing ways? And really, that's what came down to it. He was a really acclaimed, up-and-coming director. Hollywood's internal bullshits, money grubbing, and egos ruined his film and made him take the fall. And he's not the only one. There is no shortage of directors like that. Stephen Norrington, who did Death Machine and Blade. Kurt Wimmer, who did Equilibrium. Alex Gardner, or Garland, who did Dread and Ex Machina. Even Paul S.W. Anderson, who did Event Horizon. Imagine where his career would have gone after that if Hollywood had not fucked him and pushed him into essentially being the schlock director who's just doing it for cash now, which is what happened also to Tobe Hooper after he made, brain freeze, Space Vampires.
Oh, Life Force.
Yeah, after he made Life Force, which is an excellent film if it had been shown in the director's cut.
Yeah, and the director's cut is phenomenal.
And the fact of the matter is, it was that Tobe Hooper was drawing too much attention away from Spielberg with his direction of Poltergeist, and Spielberg wanted to sink him. Think of all these directors that could have, and there are tons more that I really just sat down and thought about it, who have created one or two films and then just had their dream shit on and torn to shreds, and now they're either directing schlock or working on some crew holding a light or doing effect for some asshole who's making Transformer 10.
Yeah.
The films we could have gotten from them if it had not been for the way that Hollywood's run, where it's essentially a bunch of money-grubbing shitheads who are producers, lawyers, and essentially actors who are full of themselves. And that's what destroyed Stanley, a producer and a really old actor who should have just been shot in the face. I'm sorry.
Putting it mildly.
I am sorry. Brando had no right to do that. He was just on that set having fun collecting a check.
Yeah, he wasn't taking the job seriously.
And he knew he was wrecking the film.
And he was delighting in doing so.
Yeah.
And having these outlandish requests. I mean, I wasn't joking about the ice bucket. He insisted on having an ice bucket on his head.
Yeah. Brando should have taken the fall for that, not Stanley. And the same thing. Sean Connery should have taken the fall for League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, not director Stephen Norrington.
Yeah.
How about the failure of, what was it? The one that came after Equilibrium with Mila Jovovich.
Oh, Ultraviolet.
Ultraviolet apparently is a completely different film, but we never got to see it.
Mm-hmm.
And, the Hollywood assholes re-edited it, released it, and bombed it. They blamed him.
Mm-hmm.
How many directors, really, and that's why I wonder why these directors don't make more indie films and say, you know what, the money's not worth it. Do what Carpenter did.
Well, the fact that quite frankly, if anything good comes out of COVID-19 and it overnight destroying the Hollywood way of doing things, I hope what it means is that a lot more independent creators get their stuff out there and into a venue where, viewers like you and I and our audience can see their films without needing the Hollywood establishment.
Yeah. And I would love to see some of these directors who are still definitely young enough to do work, just say, screw it. You don't need the Hollywood system.
Mm-mm.
Carpenter worked outside of the Hollywood system. They never liked him.
No.
And they tried to destroy him too, but hey, he may have never gotten an Oscar, or he may have never gotten the credit he deserved from the Hollywood crowd, but the man has a lifelong legacy.
Mm-hmm. And he's a legend in the industry, and he is required viewing now.
So,
Nicole Diaz, I had a tiny anthology of H.P. Lovecraft. I wonder how you feel about this movie.
Well, you know how I feel about this movie now, but tell me about your anthology sometime, okay? Either email me or send it to me via Twitter. I'll say this to anyone who's emailed me. If I'm a little slow to respond, sorry, I suck at correspondence. You would not believe the amount of email and tweets I get that I need to catch up on. It's always a challenge. I understand why other writers actually hire people to do this for them. Even if that's disingenuous. Doesn't King have someone who answers his letters for him?
Yeah, he does. He always has. His wife, I think, used to do it for him.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Is that why all the letters say, no, my wife is an angel? And it's
I don't know.
That's a writing question, but sure, why the hell not?
Okay, when you do an adaptation of a third-person story, how do you show it in narrative? You have to shift the first person? Let's say that to the end. Okay. Are you gonna Are you going to?
Well, the short answer is really you take the core theme and pacing and soul of the story, and you decide how you want to tell it.
Yeah, let's wait till the end to God, what's the word I'm looking for on that? You know, to discuss that.
The word is discuss. We need to get more sleep. Yeah,
but both of us are lacking sleep and have a shit ton of caffeine right now. So if I can't think of words, I apologize.
Well, you just got finished with taxes. I'm trying to balance writing and my dumb family. And I mean, I'm glad that I'm in Arizona and they're in California, but it's stressing the hell out of me. Mom, stay in the goddamn house.
Well, we just went to the store.
There's over 1,000 now, and you come on.
Well, don't worry. We just went to the store.
Let me put it this way: San Diego has more than half the number of cases that the entire state of Arizona does.
Yeah.
The city of San Diego has more than half of the cases worth that the whole state has here, and she's going out. She still wants to go to the supermarket. That's keeping me up. My hair is probably going to go more gray because of that.
No, the hair in your human suit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's my gray skin affecting the hair.
It's leaching the color out of your hair instead of the color out of space.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to get a new human suit eventually.
The color out of space gray.
Yeah.
Reminds me of a video I saw on how James Cameron really wanted an alien sound of music for Avatar. Are you serious? He got what he paid for, but he didn't like it because it sounded weird and exotic. Oh, the irony.
Yeah, that's kind of funny, actually.
That's hilarious.
So are we talking weird and alien sounding like the really cool soundtrack to Farscape, or something like it came out of someone's asshole while scuba diving?
No, I read that like, the hills are alive with the sound of music, but with Avatar. That's how I read that.
Oh, okay.
I mean, Vangelis is still alive. If they'd wanted to take the lazy route, they could have just had him again.
They probably would have had to have offered Vangelis an ass load of money to come back and do another Blade Runner score. He is really weird about it, and I don't know. He won't open up, but there seems to be some sort of tension that he's pissed. For a time, apparently, he was very proud of that soundtrack, but over time, he got pissed off that it overshadowed everything he's ever done before or since. And so he's really weird about the Blade Runner score.
Well, it's kind of like that's become his Nutcracker suite. Where is it Tchaikovsky? Yeah. Is that who did the Nutcracker?
Oh God, I don't remember.
I think it's Tchaikovsky.
Some German dude.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, because I think I'm wrong. Where he just shat that out. He really didn't care about it, and that's what he became the most famous for. And ever since, he's hated the Nutcracker suite. So yeah,
well, it was a bunch of really catchy hooks, and
yeah, it was nothing but it was pop music for the time.
Yeah, and it's really, really, really catchy. I mean,
it's good pop music. I mean, we play it every year to this day, but yeah, he hated it. The only piece that's good, in my opinion, though, and not poppy, is the one they never play, which is the Bird in the Gilded Cage. I love that piece. But anyway.
I just like the fact that when I saw the performance of the Nutcracker Suite, the uncle, the actor playing him, had this thing, these, I don't know what, there were charges on his wrists.
Like squibs?
Yeah, and he would turn his hand to the audience, so it looked like he was shooting flames out whenever he did magic.
Oh, that's cool.
And I was like, I don't know how he didn't burn his hands off or set his clothing on fire, but it looked awesome.
They could have been Roman candles. You can do that with Roman candles.
I have no idea what it was, but it was cool. That and the Rat King looked awesome.
Oh.
Okay, so Elias says that it was also Val Kilmer's fault that fucked up Island of Dr. Moreau.
I honestly wouldn't doubt it. I mean, that was the heyday of Val Kilmer's, I'm so awesome and just being a complete asshole. He hadn't learned humility yet, if he ever did. So John Carpenter will always have my respect. Never compromise your creativity. Damn fucking straight.
John Carpenter is my biggest I guess, who I admire most. I mean, there are writers that I admire greatly for their style or what they've done, or they've been greatly influential to me. But as far as someone's career, it's always been John Carpenter. And maybe I would have been more successful if I had been less, if I'd been willing more to compromise my vision. But, you know, I don't know. I'd rather be a minor success at doing what I want rather than a major success being miserable. And that's 100% to seeing that Carpenter did it and that he was willing to go through all sorts of mountains of shit to make the movies he wanted his way.
Well, and even the films where it really wasn't his film, he was doing it because it was a favor or doing it for money. Christine, Starman, he always still gave 110%.
Starman was kind of him. He needed the money to fund what he wanted to do, and I think he had to complete a contract.
I heard he had to complete a contract.
He hates that film, and I have to agree, I don't like it either.
Oh, I hate Starman. I always have. But I still enjoy Memoirs of the Invisible Man.
Yeah, I mean, that was a work for hire one, but he did enjoy doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of plays like a really good TV movie.
Yeah. And, you know, let's face it, the effects, though dated, still hold up for the most part.
The kind of movie it is, the effects weren't all that important. It was really the story.
Mm-hmm. No, like how he did the floating building.
Yeah.
Is Ishii gonna revisit his predictions for the horror genre? You think the Chinese coronavirus is gonna affect it?
I think we're gonna see a lot of plague stories. I wouldn't be shocked if Stephen King doesn't try and get The Stand made once again.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard Stephen King doesn't even want to touch those discussions right now. And
Stephen King's losing his mind to Trump derangement syndrome. That guy is bonkers.
Well, actually, speaking
I thought he was bad on the coke.
How many conspiracy theory films do you think we're going to get out of this?
Well, that'll all depend.
Mm-hmm.
No, that will definitely depend. If we come out of this stronger than before, tons and tons of conspiracy films. If we come out of this as a complete shit disaster, zombies will come back.
Okay.
That's my prediction. We really did not have a sense of stability after 9/11. And so we got zombies. Everyone was waiting for the other shoe to drop and the world to end. If we'd come out of that unscratched and stronger than before, like the Gulf War, the first Gulf War under Bush, it would have been all conspiracy. It would have been conspiracies and aliens.
So
I have actually a very long, you want to do that show finally where I discuss that whole thesis I have on that?
Yes, I totally think we should do that. When do you want to do that? Let's tease when we're doing that.
I don't know.
You want to do it this week?
Well, no, I have to reread the 9,000 word article I wrote on it just to revisit my notes.
Okay.
Yes, I wrote a 9,000 word article on it, and then it got rejected by the fucking editor who hired me to do it didn't want to pay me. So I said, okay, you don't get it then.
You should. I think it would be a good time to publish that again, either self-publishing or we find somebody else. But I think now would be a good time for that to be.
Well, if I had actually had a better weekend, I would have been spending it relearning the new Kindle format, and I would be able to do that. I've got books that are ready to go up, but I've found that Kindle formatting has changed quite a bit, so I'm reading a book on how to do it again. If anyone out there knows a quick and dirty guide, so I don't have to read 4 or 5 chapters, it's like a 1, 2, 3, 4 step like it used to be, please let me know. But yeah, anyway. Essentially, I have to learn to format using Word 10 now, rather than, is it Word 10 or what is it now?
It's either Word 10 or it's Office 365.
Yeah, I think it's Office 365. It used to be Word 7.
Yeah.
I was formatting in Word 7 back then. A lot has changed, so I have to relearn it. I thought I'd have scars up by this weekend, but they've changed a lot. Mm-hmm. So yeah, okay, I'll try and get that article published, and I'll stop waiting for someone to take the damn thing. Nobody's gonna. I don't know. Publishing's fucked. We got a good one here.
Is he? Oh, we already read that.
Oh, did we?
Yes.
All right. I still think the monster of the 2020s is going to be the female, the feminine gone amok. I keep seeing more and more films that embody that.
The future monster is female.
Yeah, exactly. The future is female as far as the monsters and nightmares. A female virus.
The fiend is female.
The fiend is female.
Well, with the statistics on who is more susceptible to the virus, I'm actually shocked that feminists aren't, crowing as loudly as possible. It's like, oh wait, no, they're pissed off that it's not attacking women as much.
Yeah, women are pissed that they're not affected most, and they're trying to find an excuse why it affects them most.
Like
it really is,
shit, ladies,
It's gotten to the point now where every old patriarch and so-called misogynist from the 1950s who said you don't let women in because they'll make it all about them is now being proven right.
Yeah.
That was always their claim. You don't let them in the priesthood or in the clergy because they'll make it all about them. Don't let them into business because they'll make it all about them. Don't let them. That was always the claim. Or they'll let their emotions govern what they do.
Mm-hmm. And, it pains me to say it. They are 100% right.
There was another fear too. And I'm trying to, I think it was actually Susan B. Anthony,
mm-hmm.
who was worried that women would let their emotions and their partiality to good looks influence their votes rather than common sense.
Well, she also didn't want women to lose their, their preferred treatment as, just as children are given more, are allowed to do more things because they are children and don't know better on how to behave. Same with women. And she didn't want women to lose that status. If women became, equals, then they would be held to the same standards as men. And 100%, I agree. Women should be held to the same standards as men.
Well, she was worried that women would cease acting like women.
Yeah. That they have to have that preference.
And she felt that there was a critical role women filled that no man could do.
Which
is kind of correct.
It is correct, because the idea is that, this is something that we need to, a image of beauty and innocence and purity that we need to protect and uphold. And I do think that does need to continue. It's just, if you're going to be a woman who wants to have special treatment, you don't get to have the same rights as
well. Also,
men.
What did the first thing feminism go after? Expectations of female virtue.
Mm-hmm.
No, women can just do whatever they want.
I'm like, how dare you call me a slut? It's like, well, you are a slut. Yeah. I'm sorry.
How dare you call me a welfare mom? Okay, welfare mom.
He's like, well, because you're on welfare and you've got 10 kids. That's why.
I think Dandy's onto something here.
If the future is female, then I want another giant praying mantis movie.
I would so love to see a remake of The Deadly Mantis.
That would be awesome.
I would see that.
Although I think we also are in for another bee woman movie.
Yeah, that would be good.
Especially if they're naked.
As far as The Deadly Mantis, it'd be great is to have it part of the Monsterverse.
Oh, Kamunga? Is that Kamunga or?
I think Kamacuras.
Kamacuras.
But okay. No, I meant The Deadly Mantis as in the old.
Yeah, but what I mean is it would fit with both. It could double as both. You can even have it that it comes out of being frozen in the ice.
Wolf 10 Media has a great question.
How do you approach a touchy subject such as as sexual violence and the R word? How do I do it? I'm choosing my words very carefully.
Well, you've never really written anything like that.
No, I haven't written anything like that, but I've edited enough and seen enough.
I really don't write any of that stuff either, do I?
No, you don't.
It just doesn't really interest me.
Really? First and foremost, I'm going to say, if you're going to do it, make sure that there's a reason that is appropriate to the story to have that rape scene. And the reason why is so many writers and so many movie creators, just so many creators in general, use that for shock and awe to try to like grab the audience and go, oh, this guy's really bad. He rapes women. Oh, this person is really awful. They rape people. Oh, this poor child was raped, and that's why they grew up the way that they did. And you know what? 2/3 to 3/4 of the stories that I've read and the books that I've come across and the movies that I've watched where that's happened, it's not necessary. It's just there for shock value, and it cheapens everything that you do. In fact, moving forward from that point, it cheapens everything that comes after that. So be very careful when you're using it. I'm not saying don't use it. I'm just saying be very careful how you use it, how you approach it, and make sure that it's appropriate to the story. Don't
mention my name, but I'm going to ask you.
Okay.
I was going to say, explain to the audience the one scene you hate most in every female hero story that you see.
Well, there's a few, but...
you know which one I'm talking about. The number one scene you see the most of that you just, if you read it, that's it. It goes in the trash or it gets in the savage pile.
Well, basically the boyfriend that gets too grabby and won't take no for an answer.
Or the random guy off the street that comes out of nowhere.
Yeah, or, the random guy off the street who is just, hey there, sweetie, just mugging the girl isn't enough. I'm going to have a little piece of action while I'm at it. It's like, why have that? Why do that? I mean, if the late 80s, early 90s action films have taught us nothing, it's that we have seen enough random rapists walking down the street and enough dumb women in high heels who have their purses out in the open who are quite frankly begging to be raped. So just don't. Or the guy just randomly slipping a roofie on a girl, or the guy who just randomly decides I'm going to get a prostitute and then I'm going to beat her up and I'm going to rape the prostitute even though I paid for sex. I mean, it's cheap and it's worthless. And
it's a fantasy that a lot of very secure, privileged, upper class, and very comfortable women who live in the safest society in the world like to dream of because they get something out of it.
Now, as an example of it being done very well, no, I haven't watched the film entirely myself, but a channel that we've been watching a lot called Spooky Rice did a review of a movie called Kids. This film came out in the 90s, and it's a bunch of kids who basically they have no parents, or what parents they do have aren't paying attention to them. And all of these kids are sexually active in some capacity, some more than others, all of them more than they should for their age group. And you're following this one girl who has just found out that this boy that she had sex with the month previous, and this boy is a total dipshit. He purposely preys on 12 and 13-year-old girls and makes them think that he's in love with them so that he can fuck them because he thinks having sex with virgins is safest. She's just found out that she's got HIV, and she got it from this boy. And she spends this entire film trying to find him to let him know, look, I got HIV and I got it from you. And meanwhile, you're watching him wooing this 13-year-old, and it all culminates in him having sex with the 13-year-old at this party. She just lets them have it because she's just given up, and she's taken some drugs, and she passes out. And while she's passed out, the final insult to her life is that she gets ass raped at this party. So passing on, AIDS from her to her rapist. And it's brutal that you see her being raped like this, passed out at this party after everything else that's happened to her. That was effective. That worked very well as just a final fuck you to life. Just the final explanation point to that story. So I recommend checking out Spooky Rice's review, if not actually seeing the film Kids.
Okay, Nicole Diaz.
Like what Birds of Prey sort of did, it definitely felt that way.
Birds of Prey is one long, condensed, weapons grade version of what Kat described as the cliche she hates most.
Yeah. You know, it's the
all men are bad, so it's okay to hurt them.
Yeah, all men are bad. All men just want sex. All men this, all men. I mean, even in my description of Kids, where, you know, that one guy is a total dipshit, he's actually a character. I mean, they develop people in that film. And nobody is black and white in that film.
You know, I know that we're always told over and over again that women are more empathetic and sympathetic and more in touch with emotions. But yeah, the more and more we see what a true woman's supposed to be from feminism, I only get the sense that they're sadistic cunts who are selfish and hate people and really, really wish they had the ability to harm people, just they aren't strong enough to do it.
I think they're really in touch with their own feelings and their own emotions, and in throwing temper tantrums or crying when they don't get their own way.
I mean, you see these so-called female heroes now, and really what you're seeing is are sociopaths.
Yeah.
Who just like hurting people and taking whatever they want.
And justifying it.
Yeah.
Saying anything and everything to justify their actions. To add to what Kat's saying, those types of intense scenes are also jarring in some manga. I read that are considered comedies or just cheesecake stories. Those would be better without it. Yeah. Manga has a problem with that, and I don't know how much of it is cultural and how much of it is just in a manga you can explore anything and everything. And I do know that is part
there are a lot of lonely men drawing these things.
Yeah, I know that is a part of Japanese culture where they recognize because it's a drawing on the page, it's not real people, so you can explore more things. Which I recognize that there is a place for that. It's just not for me.
Okay, you know, we're really heading off the rails here, and we're going towards an hour 15. If you guys would like us to come back, would you like to come back and talk more about this stuff?
Sure. Like what, later this evening?
Would you guys like us to come back in an hour, and we can, or how much time would you need?
To what, wind down?
Wind down, eat some food. Well, we haven't really had dinner.
Yeah, I need about an hour.
Would you guys like us to come back in an hour and we can tackle what were this bizarre women hang-ups and stories in fiction and just random questions?
Just random questions. I think people would really like random questions.
I mean, we've got a few topics that we've been wanting to tackle anyway.
Yeah, you can have it'll be, you know, Editor and the Alien Potpourri. Well, Wolf really would like us to come back. Same with Eloise. What?
You know what? Yeah, how about that? I'll place that as the title. Okay, I'll set it up on Twitter. I will set a podcast up to take place roughly an hour from now.
Yeah.
And we'll meet up then. We'll meet up then, where I'll be able to talk again because I'll have taken a break. I'm serious. You know, it's good Kat's here because I am not good at speaking for long periods of time.
Oh, and I do it all day.
Yeah. All right. Good night.
Yes.
Talk to you again soon.
Yes, we'll be. Stay tuned. We'll be back on in an hour. Ishi's going to set up the timer for an hour from now. So please join us.
And we highly recommend Color Out of Space.
Yes, very much so.